part 2 of the scenario from yesterday's video. So it was getting towards 6:30 last night. The sun was going down and I was getting tired, and I still had one more quick job to go to one city south from here for a very old client. So I let this sit overnight on the vacuum pump. It's been sucking all night. I don't put a micron gauge on there because I know the system's tight. After what I found last night when I turned off the video camera because I left the recovery unit, even though by EPA standards I already recovered, if you look at the first video, below what their standards were, and I left the recovery unit on there while I went downstairs and got the rest of my equipment to prepare for recharging and prepare taking stuff I didn't need downstairs. I just left it on the recovery unit. I got several more ounces out, even though it said it was already empty. So the total fill capacity that I removed, and remember, I even thought this system might be low, but it ended up to be the exact opposite. This system was overcharged. So they had one of those great old guys who probably had 10, 20, 30 years of experience come out here, or a brand new tech who was taught by an old guy that, oh, beer can cold, let's fill it up. And under those ambient conditions, without setting this into a test mode, just by letting it run, they thought they did it right, because at the day they did it, it might have worked good on that day. But let's get more depth into the story here. So you see this? This is called a tape measure, guys. If the liquid line exceeds 33 feet plus 2.96 ounces, so you could almost say 3 ounces, per additional 5 feet of liquid line charge. Okay, and as you can see, the charge has not been installed, written on here. Number one, I measured this. It's not 33 feet. It's 23 feet. So we actually have less line set than their maximum, where you have to add an adder of refrigerant to. Number two, I did not pull out 4 pounds 13 ounces. I pulled out 4 pounds 14 ounces. That was my end game of pulling out refrigerant. 4 pounds 14 ounces on a 23-foot line set. Okay, right off the bat, 2 strikes. So what else can I get into on this? So it'd be nice if, I wanted to mention coils. Here in San Francisco, like the location I'm at right now, I got to the east of me 1 kilometer, I have the bay. Got salt water over there. To the west of me, I have 8 kilometers that way. I have the Pacific Ocean. Oh my God, I don't even know what side of the country I'm on. I have the Pacific Ocean. And what you'll find out here, and everyone says, oh, you're far away from any salt water. Even though these units are only a couple years old, everywhere they were damaged, especially like right up here, they really cut through. You have a coating, you know, we know our coils come with a slight coating on them, and these are dirty coils. Not packed and dirty, but just dirty. When I touch up here, this stuff, where it's damaged, it crumbles. The aluminum has oxidized and start to crumble. The coating has been undamaged, it's still pretty damn firm. But on the damaged parts, a little bit of crumbling and oxidation has started, because we are exposed to the salt, as you can see on that one there. So I don't know what's up with this area, but you know, in areas like this, the suppliers should not even give the option to sell units that do not have, right off the bat, no option. You have to have a coil with a coating that is rated for coastal extremes. Okay, and everyone says, San Francisco coastal, you're not like Louisiana, you don't have storms coming in, you're not like, you know, Hong Kong or you know, anyone like that where you're right on the coast and you have in pushing. So we have fog. Our fog that comes in off the ocean contains, and it pushes at a rapid rate of velocity of air, it brings salt all the way over here. So that's another thing. Coil coats, coater protection added onto your system right off the bat. Factory order them if you can, because that's one thing I've discovered on many of my units. They say they come with a coil. There's one manufacturer when it comes to coil coatings, this one individual who is like the head guru of this certain company that I've had issues with in the past. When I started, I mentioned one time I had a unit up that was like 2-3 years old, and I started seeing little tiny white crystals of oxidation forming at the edge, leading edge of the fins. He immediately jumped on the defensive and says, our papers and independent laboratory tests say we have a 1,000-hour salt spray environmental, it's this and it's that, and it's so great, and all. And he got super. Anytime you have a marketing personnel, a salesman, somebody in a company, and if you even so much as mention a certain problem, and especially if you find out that it's a pattern problem and many people thought, you'll notice they jump right on the defensive, and they have so many things to hit you with about how great their product, and all these color brochures that are not worth more than toilet paper, how they've been independently studied with different laboratory tests and stuff like that. When you get some asshole like that, who you better investigate farther how many failures there's been on that product line for that one particular problem. And before you ask them a question, go out and search how many people and failures you find on that, and have yourself armed with knowledge first, then act stupid and ask them a question. Oh, have you ever heard that I got this leak? I've developed this leak on this line set or this coil, or every one of your units at the top tube, on the back side, in this last 3 years, they all failed at this. And watch them deny that they've never. You're the only one. You're the first one. Oh, we barely have that far. Oh, former carry corrosion. They like to jump on that fucking former carry corrosions. You always know when you're dealing with a piece of shit. All right, so I'm going to charge this up, and we're going to see where we go from there. So how sensitive you go? Okay, 4 pounds 3 ounces to 4 pounds 14 ounces. They go, oh, that's not much, that shouldn't make a big difference. Here's a case scenario on one of these condensers where I was installing, and I made an error of 3 ounces. So you know how, if anybody has any experience with these, not this particular manufacturer, but this manufacturer and others, sometimes they have their larger units that have dual fans, and they have a certain case. So they'll use the body and chassis of a certain line, and they'll have one be like their commercial unit and one be their residential unit. They're beefed up and they have some extra stuff they can do, but exteriorly they're the exact same case. When you come and you walk up from a distance, you can't tell the difference apart. So on this particular manufacturer I was installing, I just finished installing 3 or 4 residential versions of a chassis size and case that was residential. And then I went to install a commercial version of that exact same chassis. The difference between the residential and the residential came with enough refrigerant. Let's give an example. With enough refrigerant line set of say 49 feet or 69 feet, you don't have to add any more refrigerant. But the commercial version of the exact same tonnage and the exact same chassis and stuff and everything like that, they come with only enough refrigerant in them for the unit itself, and then for every first foot after that, you have to start doing your adder and your math to figure out how much more refrigerant you have to add. So on that particular unit, it was only 17 or 18 feet of refrigerant line set I had from the head to the unit. It was like one side on the wall, one side outside. And that the condenser was sharing the same wall. Really easy job. I did not put in the adder. It was a cool day, everything was working fine, low load inside. tits, numbers look good, you know. I get a call 3 weeks later when it was like 90 degrees outside, and the customer had a full load on inside the house, and he said, I cannot get my inside temperature below 81 degrees. It just will not go below 81 degrees. And I go, that doesn't sound right. Something's wrong. Something is definitely wrong, because I know for a fact you should be able to get it down to 65 degrees, 68 degrees. So I drove out there and I looked at the unit and I go, damn, he's right. He can't get it. There's nothing. He doesn't have it overloaded or anything like that. It just won't get below 81 degrees. And so I went back out to the unit and I looked at the label, and it dawned on me at that time, my mistake. My mistake was I was in the mindset I was installing the residential version of that same chassis style, and I didn't put the adder in for 18 feet of line set. And on that particular unit, 18 feet was only 3 ounces. I added 3 ounces, 68 degrees. He was able to bring the room down to 68 degrees. 3 ounces. That's it. That's all what made the difference. So yes, these are critically charged. And on top of that, these are not even microcoil. If this was a microcoil condenser and a microcoil evaporator, it would even be more crucially charged. And that's where guys in the automotive field make mistakes, especially the old guys who are used to old tube and fin type condensers and evaporators and having a big leadway of what they could get away with on refrigerant. With these new cars, especially with the electric compressors, if you have a micro channel condenser and a micro channel evaporator that's not much bigger than the palm of your hand, that evaporator underneath the dash, you don't have the option of putting 1 or 2 ounces in when the system charge is only 14 ounces or 16 ounces. That's not an option. So this is a Saturday and we're on the other side of the building to our other unit. My son's down there, but this was that unit that came up on the building site in another room for another purpose, and they knew I was on location, so they called me up to do this in emergency. So it ended up with that first video on this with the dirty coil, dirty fan, and mini split wall mount air handler. So let me get this thing charged up and we'll go from there.